Let's go now to Emily Pagashnik for the weather news. Emily?
Thanks, Morgan. Here in the weather studio, we've been taking a look at flooding down in Columbia, South Carolina. It has actually forced some evacuations for some homes and has flooded roadways. Officials are urging people to stay cautious because the flooding isn't quite over just yet. And here we see a truck drive across flooded roadways, and if you pay attention, you can actually see a piece of the road fall away. And officials again are urging people to stay off of flooded roadways if they can. A woman also had to be rescued from her home when she went into labor. She couldn't get to the hospital because of the flooded roadways, and they couldn't get to her, so they actually rescued her by canoe. Baby Elijah and mom are doing great. And now Hurricane Joaquin was forecasted using several different weather forecasting models, and these models, they run off of supercomputers that generate mathematical algorithms that create runs like this. I know right now it looks a little bit daunting because it has a bunch of numbers and a bunch of abbreviations, but as meteorologists we decipher it for you to make it a little bit easier to read. Now we take a look at a couple different models here and their differences. Here we just see a few rain bands that are kind of concise and more close together. You take a look at a second one at the same exact time. The precipitation bands are a little bit more farther apart, and as meteorologists we have to take chances to make sure we look at them both and make sure and put together our forecasts based off of what we most think due to our training and our instincts. And since hurricane season ends in a couple of months, a whole lot of people aren't really thinking about their spring flower beds, but right now is actually the perfect time for a few flowers.
Winter frost is quickly approaching. That doesn't mean that planting season is quite over yet.
As long as the ground is not frozen and it's still workable, you can plant.
Now is the perfect time for planting tulips and other bulbs.
You plant it, the roots form and get established, and then next spring, when they come out of dormancy, then that's when they start to grow.
Spacing and depth do matter, but even inexperienced gardeners can have flowers for next spring.
If you don't want to dig the hole and space them out, we actually have a planting mat that you just set right down in there.
You do have to be careful on where exactly you place your bulbs, since not everywhere is ideal for growth.
The north side is really not meant to be for bulbs. You want to have them where they get probably 4 to 5 hours of good sunshine a day.
Though time is limited for fall planting season, plenty of water and decent sunshine will ensure a beautiful flower garden for the spring.
And to ward off rodents who may make off with your freshly planted bulbs, you may want to put down some steel wire or sprinkle cayenne pepper across the area. And that brings us to our weather question of the week. What was the strongest hurricane that made landfall in the United States? Was it Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Andrew, or Hurricane Ivan, or the Labor Day hurricane? Now, Morgan, this hurricane was the third strongest hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean, and it had sustained winds of about 185 miles per hour.
All right, thanks, Emily. Now, Emily joins us in the studio with a final look at the weather. Emily?
Thanks, Morgan. As we look at temperatures for the next week, we're going to be way above average for most of the country. The Four Corners area being pretty hot for precipitation. The Four Corners area is going to look to get some rain. It's mainly going to stay along the Mexican border. Otherwise, everyone else is going to be pretty dry. And brings us back to our weather question of the week. What was the strongest hurricane to make landfall in the United States? That was actually the Labor Day hurricane back in 1935. And that hurricane started off with modest beginnings and quickly grew into a Category 5 hurricane before it hit the Florida Keys. And Morgan and Kari, that hurricane actually interrupted some construction on U.S. Highway 1, which connects the country to the Florida Keys.
Well, for Labor Day weekend, that sounds like the worst way to spend it. Thanks, Emily.